Hello, everyone. Thank you for making it to the Cyber Meetup tonight. I'm really pleased to introduce Christian Espinoza. He is a best-selling author and entrepreneur, and he'll be presenting why we are losing the cybersecurity war. So give him a warm welcome.
How's it going?
Good.
Wonderful. All right. So if you have any questions as I go through the talk here, feel free to jump in. I want to keep this interactive. For Christian, I travel about 90%, but I used to have a company here called Alpine Security in O'Fallon, Illinois, where we're headquartered. I sold the company in December to Cerberus Sentinel, so I work for the parent company now. I just got back from Hawaii on Saturday, so I'm a little bit jet lagged, and I'll be leaving for Ireland here in a couple of weeks. Like I said, I travel most of the time.
You're going to where?
Ireland.
Nice.
I'll tell you a little bit about that here. All right. So given the choice between laundry detergents, would you choose a laundry detergent that got your clothes super clean, like the whitest whites, or a laundry detergent that made your clothes smell really good? The popular choice might surprise you. Which one?
Smell.
Clean.
That's a smell.
Okay, all right.
Wait,
All right,
Just be
interesting.
afraid to sit next to them on an airplane.
Interesting. So over the past 2 years almost, about 18 months, I've been traveling to Ireland quite a bit. My partner, I met her right before COVID happened. I mean, I met her before that, but we got together right before COVID. And during this whole scenario, she couldn't come to the US, so I spent a lot of time traveling to Ireland. And Ireland's beautiful to visit. It's not beautiful to stay long periods of time. One of the things I did when I traveled to Ireland is I stayed in a lot of different Airbnbs. One of the Airbnbs I stayed at the last trip had this laundry detergent that made my clothes smell fantastic. They smelled so good, even strangers, like walking down the street or in the grocery store, with their mask on and everything for COVID, would compliment me on how great I smell. So it's got me thinking about laundry detergent. So I did a lot of research because it feels good to get a compliment from a complete stranger about how nice you smell, right? So I did a lot of research about laundry detergent. And one of the leading laundry detergent manufacturers spent millions and millions of dollars trying to figure out a formula to make their detergent get clothes cleaner than all of their competitors. And after many, many months of research and development, they figured this out. And when they released this new formula to the world that got clothes cleaner than all of their competitors, the whites, the whiter than any other whites, or any other competitors' whites, guess what happened?
They bought it. Sales didn't.
That's right. Nobody really bought it. Their sales did not increase. It turns out people don't really care about how clean their clothes get when they come out of the washing machine. They care about how they smell. So they were focused on the wrong thing. And I believe in cybersecurity, just like the laundry detergent industry, we're focused on the wrong thing. And this is the reason we're losing the cybersecurity war. We're focused on the data-rich tangibles. We tend to focus on better technology, more frameworks. We've got enough frameworks out there, I believe. Like the whitest of whites, like laundry detergent. We're focused on purely the data. And what we forget is the human-rich experience at the expense of the data. And it turns out that how people feel, just like how you feel when you get the compliment about how great you smell, is just as important, if not more important, than the data. Nobody really compliments you on how white your shirt is, for instance. And for me, when I had my company, Alpine Security, my kind of defining moment that started me down this path, and I wrote a book about this, is about 5 years ago, one of my engineers was debriefing me about how a penetration test report review session with the client. A penetration test is like ethical hacking. And he told me that the client just didn't get it. And I had heard this most of my career. We like to say in cybersecurity that the clients don't understand what we're talking about. Management doesn't understand. And for some reason, though, when I heard this, it struck me differently, probably because this was my company. These were my clients. I invested my personal money into the company, like my life savings into the company. And I thought, if my clients don't get it, this is the problem. And when I connected the dots throughout my career, I realized that this is a problem in our industry. And it's been a problem in our industry since I've been in the industry, which is like almost 30 years. And there's really a lot of intellectual bullying because we want to be smarter than other people. That's how people get significance in cybersecurity. And posturing, which means we pretend we know things when we don't really know because we're afraid to ask the question. And this shows up with things like they just don't get it, management doesn't understand, the users are idiots. It also shows up with the kiss up and kick down managers, which some of you have probably experienced. So I believe that this intellectual bullying, and this perceived sense of intellectual superiority, is really the underlying root cause of why we're losing cybersecurity. It's not technology, it's not frameworks. And for me, once I realized this, I thought, why should I care? Like, why should I even bother caring about this? Well, one of the reasons was necessity. My job with my company and my job as a CEO is to make sure our clients get it. If our clients don't understand the risk we're trying to convey to them, then they're not going to understand how to fix the problem or the severity of what's really involved. I also realize if our clients don't feel understood and appreciated, they're probably going to go somewhere else, which results in lost revenue. And when I pull back the curtain on my organization, I realized this was a problem internally as well. Some of my engineers, my highly technical people, very high IQ and a little bit low IQ or low EQ, were afraid to admit something during a meeting, afraid to admit they didn't know something for fear of being ridiculed. This does not foster great collaboration. And you probably think, like, why should you care about this? Now, it's a little bit different topic than you might be used to hearing with cybersecurity. Well, the simple answer is what we're doing in cybersecurity is not working. Just about every day, we read about a new data breach, and just when we think there can't possibly be a bigger data breach, there's another one at least tomorrow. So what we're currently doing is not working, and doing more of what's not working is not going to solve the problem. And throughout my career, just about everyone I've met wants to feel understood and appreciated. They want to have a positive impact, and they want to feel fulfilled at work. And I believe that people feel fulfilled at work, then their home life is going to improve as well. Because people, as much as we want to have compartmentalized, people carry what goes on at work to their home environment. And then I wondered, who am I to take on this challenge? My company is already doing very well. We were already successful. And I didn't realize we were at a glass ceiling. They call it a glass ceiling because you can't see it, right? But we were being held down by this lack of emotional intelligence inside our organization. The other thing is I didn't even know where to start. I have an engineering degree. I don't have a psychology degree. I'm not an expert in human behavior. And probably the biggest thing is I was afraid of being ridiculed by my peers. Because whenever you bring up subjects like this, people like to, say you're crazy, you're talking about the woo-woo stuff versus the, another framework that we already built, we don't need, or another technology with AI or next-gen firewall or something like that. So I decided to do something about it. I don't like the status quo. I'm very anti-status quo. And what I felt like needed to happen, I mentioned my company was fairly successful, but I felt like if we added back this human element and provided a great experience, not just a great technical experience, but a great overall experience to our clients, then it would help my company do better. And I also felt like if I can get better at emotional intelligence, it's going to help me in all aspects of my life, not just professionally, but personally in my relationships and everything else. So I made this shift by doing a lot of things over 5 years in my organization. I did a lot of training, like every third. On my book, I call this a secure methodology because I believe a lot of the problems we have are a result of insecurities and they manifest through the intellectual bullying. So if we become secure with ourselves, some of these problems go away, like the intellectual bullying and posturing. So I'm going to quickly go over each of these 7 steps. And for each of them, I'll give you a brief definition. I'll talk about some symptoms that if you have these symptoms, or someone you know has these symptoms, it means you may need to improve in the area. I'll tie it to cybersecurity and give you a quick activity to do for each of these as well. Like I said, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to jump in. And these are in order, and they're all written about in detail in my book. I'm going to give away everyone, I think I have a box of books. There might be like 20 copies, so I think everyone should get a copy if they're interested after this. All right, so step 1 is awareness. Awareness is knowledge or perception of a situation or fact. So a symptom that you may need some improvement in awareness is if you find yourself judging somebody else. Like with my highly technical engineer that was going over the penetration test report with a client, he was judging the client because he said the client just doesn't get it. If my engineer had the awareness, he would realize it's our job to make sure the client understands what we're talking about. Otherwise, how are we going to make the client, understand and become more secure? An activity for this is to really listen when people are talking, and I'll talk about monotasking later, and ask better questions. I'm a big believer, if you ask a better question, you'll get a better answer. Often we don't ask a question, we just make assumptions. And you want to ask how or what questions, and avoid why questions. Typically, if you ask somebody a why question, they automatically get defensive. It's like a natural instinct. Something else to consider from an awareness perspective is, and I talk about this in my book, neuro-linguistic programming a little bit, but we each have these neural pathways in our brain. Some of them are stronger than others. And what happens is when we are triggered, we hear something, we see something, someone looks at us a certain way, we automatically run a certain program in our brain. And often that program is like malware, it's malicious, it's not really serving us. So in order, from an awareness perspective, we need to realize that whenever we're triggered, this sort of thing may happen, and we need to be able to do a control C and stop that bad behavior, which is a strong neural pathway, and create a new behavior, which will start out weak and grow stronger. Just like a muscle, the more you use it, the stronger it's going to get. And this takes a lot of practice. It's a simple concept, but it's not easy. And even me today, I struggle with this quite a bit, especially when I'm having conversations with my girlfriend or significant other. She's an executive life coach, so she triggers me sometimes, and I have to step back and realize I'm on autopilot running this bad program, and I can be like, stop, because it's not serving us in the relationship. So it is challenging. Step 2 is mindset. Did you have a question?
I had a question just kind of with the awareness thing.
Yeah.
I just wanted to kind of pivot on that. Because I do a lot of penetration tests too. And one thing that I've seen with customers is that I see that they're scared to ask the question to me when I'm delivering the report, what does this risk mean to me? It's funny because time and time again, I'll give them a report, and I'm saying ask questions. They're like, no, I pretty get it. It's almost like they are a little bit apprehensive to even ask the question of okay, kind of teach me. And it's kind of funny how you do that. It's I see it on both sides too. But I totally understand that. So
yeah, they don't want to feel
they don't know either us. Yeah. Because it's this whole red team and blue team kind of side. It's they don't want to give up their secrets to be okay, this is what they're struggling with, really. But they don't see us as a partner on the red team side. And that's kind of how we are. And I think as people in the red team and penetration side, we have to make sure that they feel safe. And I like that whole empathy kind of approach because I think it's almost about making them feel safe with you.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I'll talk about empathy later, but that's a good point. But if you have the awareness that someone's afraid to ask the question, you kind of lead that conversation
Yeah.
as well.
Anyway, that need that.
No, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
It goes both ways. You know,
Yeah.
nobody wants to, not nobody, but most people don't want to admit they don't know something. Especially it's sort of their job to know, they're going to be hesitant to admit it. But if both sides are not admitting something, you're not going to arrive at the outcome you want to arrive at, which is you helping you become more secure.
Yeah. It's interesting.
It also depends if it's a group setting or not, or if you're one-on-one. The thought fellow might not want to appear to not know because his manager's sitting over next to him or what he was thinking. It happens all the time. Get
Yeah.
them one-on-one and say, hey, if they feel safe, then you can many times get better communication.
Yeah, that's a good point. Understand, having the awareness to know who's in the room.
Awareness of, yes,
Yeah.
their situation, if they're isolated, if they could feel threatened because or constricted because of the audience that's around them.
Yeah, and that, we did pen testing quite a bit. So we would do these debriefings and like the CEO might be on the phone in front of like the lead IT manager or something. So they're very nervous about admitting that something they already told the CEO was fixed and you discovered it wasn't fixed, you know, it's a problem for them. So you have to watch.
Especially if you're in a boardroom and you're going through with the board.
Yeah, exactly.
That-
Yeah, so having that awareness helps. Step 2 is mindset. There's generally two types of mindset. There's a fixed versus a growth. The mindset is your set of attitudes or beliefs. The bottom line is you want to have a growth mindset. I'll go to the differences here in a minute. A symptom is if you see problems all the time versus opportunities. That means you're leaning towards a fixed mindset. Like with my engineer that said that they just don't get it. That's looking at it as a problem versus an opportunity. If my engineer had a growth mindset, he may have stepped back and said, how can I make sure they understand? How can I change how I'm communicating? How can I articulate this risk in a manner that they understand and know how to fix it? Versus just say, they just don't get it and that's a problem. And with cybersecurity and other highly technical careers, I often hear people say things like, I'm just not good with people. If you say I'm just not good with people, you're not going to be good with people because that's a belief you're reinforcing, and that's a fixed mindset. Instead of saying that, you might say, I have some challenges with people because by default I'm more of an introvert, for instance, but I can get better with people. And if you think about it, you're surrounded by people pretty much on a daily basis, so why not get better at dealing with people? A lot of my engineers would say, I don't like to deal with people. I'm like, well, do you have parents? Do you have children? Do you have a spouse? They're like, yeah. Are all those relationships flourishing? Not really. Well, maybe there's a little bit of room for improvement there, right? An activity for mindset is the 5-minute journal. Has anyone done the 5-minute journal? Anyone heard the 5-minute journal? Okay, you can check it out on Amazon. It's actually really good. It takes 5 minutes to do. That's why it's called 5-minute journal. In the morning, you write down 3 things, what you're grateful for. I filled out mine this morning. I skipped it for a couple weeks. I noticed my mindset was kind of tanking a little bit. So when I do it consistently, my mindset's better. You fill out what you're grateful for. What would make today great? That activates what's called your reticular activating system, the RAS. If you write down the morning, what would make the day great, you're more than likely going to see those things and look for them unconsciously throughout the day. And then you write down some affirmations. In the evening, you have 2 prompts, 3 amazing things that happened, and how could you have made today better? A lot of us watch television before you go to bed and fill your head full of garbage. It's garbage in, garbage out. So while you're sleeping, your brain is processing that garbage. So before you go to bed, it's much better to write down something like this. How could I have made today better? So while you're sleeping, your brain is working on solving this problem for you. It actually does make a difference. So check out the 5-minute journal. I don't get a kickback for it or anything. It's just worth checking out.
I'm sorry, I don't have a question.
Go ahead. I have a lot of questions.
So like, have you thought, and this is just something I was just thinking about, like, almost wrapping that up into an executive summary of reporting to kind of like make the client kind of go through that process with you, like during like a penetration test.
Wrapping the 5-minute journal up into it?
Yeah, like inside the executive summary. I think that could probably be like kind of a way to kind of have increase that empathy, be like, okay, well, what is working well?
I think that's a great idea.
What are things that, that could have been better, if you would have done certain other things? And maybe just having that snippet at the very beginning will kind of maybe break down those barriers. So I was just thinking about that kind of in the context what you're talking about.
Yeah, we added positives to our executive summaries of our reports, but we didn't like use them as framework. We would say, it was great work with your team, they're very cooperative. But yeah, I think framing it this way would be awesome.
Yeah.
So here's just a few examples of a fixed versus a growth mindset. I'm going to go through all these. Fixed mindset. Failure is the limit of my abilities. Growth, failure is an opportunity to learn. Fixed, I don't like to be challenged. Growth, challenges help me grow. Fixed, feedback and criticism are personal. Growth, feedback is necessary and constructive. So you get a pretty clear idea of the differences. So you want to be on the growth side. In my book, I make an analogy to the red pill and blue pill for the Matrix. Most of you see the Matrix, I take it. Which pill represents the growth mindset?
Red pill.
The red pill, that's right. Yeah. Because you're challenged, you're growing, you're uncomfortable, it's a red pill. Your situation. All right, step 3 is acknowledgement. So it's recognizing someone through actions or words, and you want to be able to acknowledge yourself as well as acknowledge others. One of the challenges I had with my company and in general is I would never acknowledge myself. So I would do like these difficult things like do an Ironman triathlon, which is pretty difficult. And as soon as I finished, I'd be like on to the next thing. I never like stopped and just said, that was pretty difficult. And I did a lot of hard work to accomplish this. I never really acknowledged myself. And what I realized is when I had difficulty acknowledging myself, that made it difficult for me to acknowledge other people. So I had to figure out how to acknowledge myself in order to acknowledge other people. A symptom of this is if you're quick to notice mistakes and slow to notice failure. In cybersecurity, this is a massive problem because the odds are against the good guys. We have to get 1,000 things right. If we miss one thing, then the cyber criminal can break in. And most managers focus on the one thing we got wrong versus commending the people for getting the 999 other things right. And what we focus on, we tend to get more of. There's a study that I like that has these two different signs, the comparison of which sign makes more people slip on a wet floor, for instance. One sign says caution, wet floor, don't slip. The other sign says caution, wet floor, walk carefully. Guess which sign resulted in more people slipping?
Don't slip.
The one that said don't slip, because we're focused on slipping. So if we're focused on the one thing we got wrong, we're going to see more of that. So it's important to focus on the right thing. For an activity for this, fairly simple. Try starting a conversation with something positive. And this has to be genuine and heartfelt. If you don't like the color green, don't compliment someone's green shirt they're wearing, for instance. It needs to be legit. So has anyone heard of the 5 love languages?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so they've basically taken the 5 love languages and morphed these into the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace. And I mention this because it's important if you're trying to acknowledge someone and show you appreciate them, that you do it in a language that they understand or value, not the one you like. And most people gravitate towards 2 of these. So a tangible gift would be maybe a Starbucks gift card. Quality time, you could go to lunch with somebody, spend some time with them. Words of affirmation, you can obviously compliment someone on the job they did great, or write them a letter or email. Physical touch in the workplace, you know, you can do a fist bump or something. Acts of service, you can help someone clean out their desk or their office, for instance. So these are things that, if you're trying to show appreciation to someone, you need to do it to what they like. And this has been a struggle with me because, like, at a personal level and a professional level, like with my girlfriend, she likes my partner's like words of affirmation. I'm not like a gushy guy that just gives words of affirmation all the time, but that's what she wants from me. And if I don't do that, if I give her like a tangible gift, like send her flowers, it doesn't mean that much to her, even though to me that was a big deal, right? So I had to like change how I view things and be uncomfortable and have a growth mindset on this. But this is with everybody. So if you think about yourself, you probably gravitate towards two of these, just like everyone else does. Any other questions on that? All right, step 4 is communication. So I'm a believer that the meaning of communication is the response you get. So if you're not getting the right response, the ownership is on you to alter how you communicate. This is a massive problem in cybersecurity. We always blame everybody else. The users are idiots. Management doesn't understand. That director doesn't understand. Versus maybe we should have communicated differently. This ties to the other 3 steps. We have to have the awareness that they're not getting it. We have to have the right mindset to change how we communicate, and we have to acknowledge the things that they are getting. The symptom is if you repeat yourself 20 times and the person is still not getting it. I traveled quite a bit in my life. I remember in Italy, I was in Rome, and this American was trying to order an ice cream from an Italian. And the Italian did not understand what the American was saying, and the American did not understand what the Italian was saying. This is very painful for me to watch. So the American, this is why Americans have a bad reputation in Europe, the American just kept repeating himself the same way, but louder and louder and louder and louder. And obviously, the Italian didn't understand. He's getting more frustrated. So instead of altering how the Americans spoke and maybe try to learn a little bit of Italian, he just tried increasing the volume, which was not working. In cybersecurity, we're filled with technical jargon. We test each other on technical jargon. We have like the Security Plus has like 4 pages of acronyms. And we force each other to learn all these acronyms, but then we wonder why nobody understands what we're talking about. So it's like this vicious cycle we've got into. So we need to alter how we communicate so our clients actually get it. Or our team understands. Our team is not afraid to admit that they don't know something. Or our board of directors, we always talk about how no one gives us money in cybersecurity. But nobody talks about we're not getting money because we're not communicating properly with the board in a way that they understand it. We just keep up the same tactic and get frustrated when we don't get the results we want. So an activity for this is actively listening and clarifying and verifying. Does anyone know what clarifying and verifying is?
Repeating, basically verifying that they understood what they're saying.
Yeah, so when you're talking to someone about something very technical, you can ask them if they understand or repeat back to you to verify, and then if there's a misunderstanding, you can clarify it. Yeah.
If I explain that properly, you put their burden on yourself, not on them. So if you're not explaining it, maybe I'm not explaining this properly. Having some way that you don't put the emphasis on them that they don't understand because they just don't understand. Not smart. So
that's a great way of putting it. But then this is on you. Maybe I haven't explained this properly. I just want to make sure you understand it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or maybe like just trying to have them repeat it in their own words, like back to you.
Yeah, that's actually that's the best.
Reflect it almost. Maybe I don't know.
That's a good way of doing it too, because if they can't repeat it back to you in their own words, they probably don't understand.
Yeah. Well, you could basically say, this is what I hear you saying. Is that correct? Or am I misunderstanding?
That's a good way to
have
do it
them
as
come
well.
back.
Yeah.
but repeating what they're saying to them and verifying that you understand what they're saying.
Yeah, perfect. And we rarely do this based on my experience in cybersecurity.
Why is it? Why don't they do that?
Why don't we do it?
No, why don't they? Or do they do verification, clarification?
Not in my experience. Very rarely.
Why is that?
There's a number of reasons. It requires, like, if I'm a highly technical person, it requires some awareness, the mindset, and some communication skills.
Okay.
And often I'm nervous that the person may ask me a question where I don't know the answer to. So I'm only thinking about myself, just based on my experience. And there's not any empathy there for the understanding of the position that the person's in. So it's a combination of all those factors, really. But I think it's mainly training and understanding. Like in cybersecurity, we focus only on learning more and more technology and very little on how to communicate, how to have emotional intelligence, and things that actually matter in my experience. Yeah.
One of the things that I've seen, it's like, I've seen storytelling go such a long way in cybersecurity. Like, if you can actually tell a story in a way where you can kind of like connect to a person, they get it more. Because a lot of times, like when we're in there, we're delivering presentations, it's just technical jargon. It's like we're not telling that story, so they lose it. And it's like, I wish more people would be like take storytelling classes, because I think like people would get it more if they kind of understood what that narrative is.
I agree. This girl I used to date for a long time, when I was on the phone talking to someone about cybersecurity, she didn't understand any of it. She would just call it robot. And that's what it sounds like to most people. Because most of the people we deal with, if they're a client of ours, they're not in cybersecurity. So the stuff that we've tested on in like Sec Plus, like Jared passes 601, so congratulations. The stuff he had to know for that test, nobody else knows those acronyms. So it's important we communicate in a way that's understood. And something to keep in mind, I talk about this fairly extensively in my book, is NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, has this communications model. And from an awareness perspective and a communication perspective, when we're talking to someone, or when someone's communicating with us, we all have this DDG filter, where we delete information, we distort information, and we generalize information. And this filter is different for everyone. We have to have this filter to prevent us from going insane, because we're receiving all this information, and some people say over 1 megabit per second, but we can only process in the like kilobit per second. So to prevent us from going insane, we automatically delete stuff. We distort something. We say, oh, this fits in this box, and we generalize something.
There's another option there. I can't remember what the other.
So if you think about it, when someone's talking to you or communicating with you, you automatically do this stuff too. You may not be aware of it, but you're doing it. Like some of you, whatever I've been saying so far, you've deleted some of it, you've distorted some of it, and you generalize some of it. So whenever you're communicating with someone else, just remember they have their own filter, and they're doing the same thing. Has anyone experienced this before?
But it depends on the mechanism you're using for communication. Because everybody learns differently, and their bit rate is going to be different for different types of learning process. So somebody's a visual learner might be able to process it at 500 kilobits per second, but somebody who is a learner from the standpoint of looking at facial expressions and seeing how people's reactions, they may be able to process that at an even higher rate, or vice versa. So I think everybody has different learning style, and every learning style has got a different bit rate.
Yeah, that's insightful. Yeah, when you're teaching a course or communicating.
So if you're
If you
talking
can
to somebody,
yeah.
if you're talking to somebody, whether you're using some visual context of what to display that, whether you're doing storytelling, whether you're using, or you're writing something down and doing it, everybody processes that differently. In the classroom, it's obvious, but it becomes on one-on-one, it's even more obvious too. in a way when you're talking to somebody. Somebody may have a hearing issue that they can't hear quite as well. They can't process that information. The auditory processing
Yeah.
isn't as refined as their visual processing capability.
Yeah, so from an awareness perspective, it can alter how we communicate with that person. I think storytelling is a good one. Like most of the things we've learned from the very old days were all stories, right? Stories involve a little bit of everything, a little bit of kinesthetic, auditory, visual, possible, olfactory, smell, gustatory, taste. Yeah.
So it all depends on the audience too. But I've noticed myself, if I paraphrase, a lot of times I end up being wrong. Well, no, because. So I do, but now I work over at the Air Force Base and I do a lot of compliance work.
Mhm.
So we get stuff in from program managers and I have to analyze it. Tell them what needs to be fixed before it goes higher up the food chain. So I've discovered something that works excellent in working with the people in the military. And that's that if I were to say to them, this needs changed or whatever it is, there was always pushback. There's always no because, no because.
Right.
But when I say to them, my SOP, my security operations procedure says, and quote, whatever it is. So you have to have the IP addresses on the diagram or whatever it is. You have to have. As soon as I put that in there, I get an excellent response back. I'll have it there this afternoon. It's not happening. So sometimes having a reference that the person acknowledges counts more than one person's voice.
That's altering how you communicate to get the response you need. Yeah, it's good. Good example.
So one of the problems that I have is like the relationships, because like a lot of times when you're in cybersecurity, you have like these brief relationships with some of these teams that you might be working with or a client, and you don't get the time to read people like that, so you don't know like how they need information. So it's really difficult, like without being embedded into a team itself and kind of learning how like people are ingesting information, because like cybersecurity, it's like its own cost center, and it's just like you get it here, you get on the bus, and you get off. It's like you don't have time to kind of develop those relationships. I think that's a big miss in the industry.
Yeah. There's some insight you can get, but yeah, the longer you're listening, the more insight. Cool. All right, step 5 is monotasking. Monotasking is the antithesis of multitasking. Multitasking is like ridiculous. Like mullets and parachute pants that went out with the, should have went out with the 80s. I know some of you probably proclaim you're awesome multitaskers. That just to me means you're very busy, but not very productive. If you have like you're an awesome multitasker on your resume or your LinkedIn profile, you may want to take that off. If you put awesome monotasker, you get more attention anyway. So monotasking is doing one thing at a time. We're monotasking. And there's a couple reasons to do monotasking. The first reason is productivity. We can't do more than one thing at a time as much as we like to think we can. It makes us very busy and not very productive. So if we can just focus on one thing for like 50 minutes or 60 minutes, you'll have less stress, you'll be less anxious, and you'll get much more done. Most of us try to like, do one thing, like we're trying to write a report, an email comes in, we jump over the email, a Slack message comes in, we jump over that, we try to jump back with the report, we take some information from the email, put in the report, and we make a mistake, and we're like, where were we? So all this stuff is context switching is very inefficient. The other reason to monotask is presence. If I'm communicating with someone and I am monotasking, meaning I'm not like picking up my phone and checking my text messages while I'm talking to them, I don't have my phone face up and look at it every time it buzzes, then I'm going to listen better to what they're saying, gain more insight, which will help me communicate much better. And they'll feel better about the relationship. You see this probably all the time. see two people out to dinner and they're both on their phone and nobody's talking to each other. It's kind of ridiculous, right? That's not monotasking. Cybersecurity, they just don't get it, is a lack of that presence. If my engineer was monotasking and being present, there would have been clues to indicate that the client did not understand what we're talking about. And I know this is for a fact of that engineer because in meetings, we had Zoom meetings quite a bit. Before we mandated monotasking and being present, I would see him multitasking meetings. He wore glasses, so I could see his screen change after reflection on his glasses, even though he tried to act like he was still totally being stealthy and present. So, then if you ask him something, he wouldn't know where we were in the meeting. So again, he was multitasking. An activity for this is block time. If you don't use time blocks or block time, I recommend trying it. This is going to be a big stretch for a lot of you, but it will make you way more productive. I talk about this in my book. I have a couple examples in my book. But basically, you divide your day, and this is an example, out into blocks of time. Each block can be like 15 minutes. But during that 15-minute time, like this one here, if I'm working on an abstract, that's all I do during that 15 minutes. That means I shut off my email, I don't answer my phone, I don't answer Teams or Slack or any other instant messaging stuff. I just do that. Very rarely do we have a critical emergency in cybersecurity that we need to respond to within a 15-minute window. Does anybody use block time? Few of you, okay. So actually on my Outlook calendar, I will put blocks of time where I'm only working on this thing, so other people can't schedule a meeting with me as well. Or when we use Teams, I don't like Teams, but since my company's acquired, we use Teams now. I show up as busy on Teams, so less people bother me in Teams as well. Step 6 is empathy. Empathy is really perspective taking. It's a challenge in cybersecurity. It's a challenge in our society today. We tend to focus on all of our differences, the politicians, the media. There's a lot of focus on how everyone is different. And if you view everyone as different, it's hard to be empathetic. We all have like the underlying human condition in common. We've all got struggles with our relationships, our health, we don't follow through our goals. We've all got things in common. If you use something like at least, that is not, a lot of people think using at least is empathetic. That is not an example of empathy. So if you say something like, your client got hit by ransomware, you said, well, at least the ransomware only hit 50% of your symptoms. You think that's going to make the client feel great? No. Most of us avoid empathy because it requires you to be in touch with your own feelings so you can identify with how somebody else feels. In cybersecurity, it's hard to have empathy when we view the world as us versus them. And it could be, we're the technical people, they're the non-technical staff, we're cybersecurity, they're IT, we're cybersecurity, they're sales. It's always something versus something else. And when we're dealing with our clients or each other, it's important we understand we have things in common, we're trying to accomplish the same thing. So it's us, not us versus them, it's us collectively. An activity for this is to use inclusive language, something like let's figure this out together. So if our sales team has some challenges and our operations team has challenges, instead of like pointing the finger at each other, why not work together to solve that challenge? From a leadership perspective, you want to have, as you see here, the effective leader, you want to have what's called high cognitive empathy and low affective empathy. So cognitive empathy means I have the awareness of how somebody else may feel about something and I can take their perspective. A lot of us in cybersecurity like to gravitate towards effective empathy and avoid it. Effective empathy means I feel the same way as somebody else feels. So as you can imagine, if we feel the same way somebody else feels, we're not going to be very effective. So we want to have high cognitive, we want to have, be able to take the perspective, stand in somebody else's shoes, but low affective. That makes sense? And you've probably seen these different types of leaders. You know, the emotional leader, obviously high affective. You've seen leaders like that before? Yeah. The manager leader over here. All right, so step 7 is Kaizen. Kaizen is constant and never-ending improvement, or can-I, some people like to say. A symptom for Kaizen is if you have the same problems this year as you had last year. That means you're not practicing Kaizen, you're not making forward progress on things. One of the main reasons for Kaizen is I think a lot of people are afraid to do something, afraid to take that first step, because they want everything to be perfect before they take the first step. So they don't have the courage to take the first step. When you practice Kaizen, which applies to all the steps in this framework I'm talking about, it gives you the courage to take the first step because you realize from a mindset perspective that if I take the step in the wrong direction, now I know it's the wrong direction and I can change directions versus trying to figure it all out in advance. And with cybersecurity, we keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. And the cyber criminals are, really kicking our butts. I mean, if I wanted to make a lot more money, I'd be a cyber criminal to start a ransomware campaign. So we need to practice Kaizen. An activity for this is the 5 why root cause analysis. Anyone heard that? 5 whys, some of you? So here's just a quick example. And the reason I talk about the 5 whys is if you're going to make an improvement and practice Kaizen, you want to improve the right thing. So you want to get to the root of what you're trying to improve, not the symptoms. In this example, this is a Space Shuttle Challenger, and it blew up. So for the 5 whys, we basically ask ourselves why 5 times. It doesn't have to be 5, it could be 6, it could be 4. But the idea is we keep drilling down to get to the real issue, so then we can fix it in the future. So in this case, why did the Space Shuttle Challenger blow up? Well, there's a tank ignition because gas escaped. Why did gas escape? There's a leaky seal because there's extreme temperature. Why was there extreme temperature? There's an O-ring failure because of incorrect specification. Why was there an incorrect specification? There was a design flaw and we decided to proceed anyway. Why did we decide to proceed anyway? Well, management made that decision. So if we were to fix something or improve something for the space shuttle program, we might want to improve how management makes decisions based on risk. Not like which vendor, where we bought stuff the O-rings from. Because this was an informed decision, probably to keep the Challenger on schedule and within budget that somebody made without really considering the risk involved in that decision. So it's important when we're looking at Kaizen to get to the root cause. Before I get that slide, anybody have any questions about what I talked about?
I'm just laughing because I took a course once where I had a professor that used this a lot, but he took it to 7 questions. But the bottom line was it always ended up being management and the CEO needed to be fired. It was pretty funny.
Well, that wasn't what I'm saying there. But
Well, it's where you ended up too, so that's where
that was a decision, yes.
his examples in class always ended up there.
The CEO is supposed to have all the risk. So technically, it's just the risk framework of going back up.
Yeah.
All right. So when I implemented these things in my company and actually thought through a lot of these things, what I realized was, and this is pretty painful, was my own contributions to these problems. I used to be the one that did the intellectual bullying, that didn't have a lot of the emotional intelligence, that didn't practice the things I'm talking about here. So I used to be part of the problem. And when I became aware of it, it's kind of painful sometimes to think I used to be a contributor to this issue. But at that point, you can pretend you weren't a contributor and try to sweep it under the rug or try to change something. And I decided to change something. I also realized, I slept better and had less stress. So one of the things that used to cause me a lot of stress when I ran my company was whenever one of my engineers would debrief one of our clients, I was always nervous I might get a phone call later on. A phone call that the client is pissed off because my engineer talked down to them or made them feel underappreciated or misunderstood. So when I implemented this in my company, I had less worry about this. Still a little bit of worry, but less worry. And then I talked about the glass ceiling earlier. I didn't realize, we were under a glass ceiling until we made these changes. And a lot of the transactions we had with clients shifted to more relationships, which resulted in more ongoing work. So instead of projects, we had annual contracts. And I wrote a book about all this stuff, my journey. But ultimately, I think our life boils down to our happiness and success in life, in business, or personally boils down to how we feel on a daily or hourly or even minute basis. So if your clients don't feel great, your team doesn't feel great, they're probably not going to be that productive, and you're going to have less collaboration. So ultimately, how we feel and how we make others feel is our key to fulfillment, effective teams, retaining clients, as I mentioned, and winning the cyber war. I think we highly neglect this, and winning in life.
Can I interrupt a little bit?
No.
Just out of curiosity,
Yeah.
how did you become aware that you were part of the problem? Did you have a life coach, a mentor, an employee?
How did I become aware I was part of the problem?
Yes.
Yes, I've had a life coach. Yes, I've done a lot of personal development, and it's been like a journey. I think what really made me aware of it is when I had my own company and I was responsible for everything. And I saw the problem from a different perspective. So it was a combination. I went through all this personal development stuff, but then I saw the effect my highly technical, high IQ, low EQ staff were having on each other and on our clients. And I realized, hey, that used to be me. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was a painful but enlightening and insightful journey. Yeah. Good question.
Thank you.
And that's why I thought it was worth sharing in my book and like in this presentation, because I had a couple of choices to think, not admit that this used to be me, but I thought, well, if I can share my own journey and help other people shortcut their journey, then that's what I should be doing. So I also thought, like, what if I didn't change anything? Like with my company, what if I didn't change anything? I often wonder, where would my company be today? I mentioned I did sell my company in December. So if I didn't change anything, I may not have been able to sell my company. I may have had more pissed off clients. I may have had like 17 ulcers from worried about my engineer putting his foot in his mouth when he's talking to a client and all things like that. I could have had clients that left, clients that got hacked, and clients that still didn't get it. And I wondered how long I'm going to continue with my company and in this industry. This industry's been a love and hate relationship for me, because the high IQ, low EQ people and all the intellectual bullying and all that, but I decided to try to shift the industry, and that's what I'm doing. So what's next? So what I'm challenging you to do is just pick one of these areas over the next 30 days and focus on that and make some improvement. So if you're like an awesome multitasker, maybe pick monotasking, try using block time, try being present when you're talking to someone, and see if that affects your stress level. See if that improves your relationships. See if that makes you more productive. If you have a difficult time acknowledging yourself or your staff or your spouse or anyone, try over 30 days finding something positive to say about somebody. And just see how it changes, your perspective and you. So what now? I do have some books. You don't have to purchase it. I have a box full of books. So if you want a book, you can have my book. You can visit my website. I have a course I'm almost done with. It's in production. On my secure methodology, there's my email address, and you can connect with me on LinkedIn. That's my LinkedIn. All right. Anybody have any questions? Yeah.
So if you are in a situation where you are being bullied by somebody else, what do you recommend for how to respond to that? And I'm talking the intellectual bullying because it does happen all the time.
Yeah, so I have an exercise in my book that does help with that a little bit. It's putting yourself in the, I call it putting yourself in the bully's shoes to understand like why they're doing the bullying. A lot of times people do the bullying because they were bullied themselves or they are insecure and want to make sure everyone thinks they're smarter than other people. So it doesn't necessarily help, but at some point, and this is the problem in our industry as well, I believe, is I'm a believer that you get what you tolerate. And we've tolerated this high IQ, low EQ, rational intelligence
Right, that's
and no
why I
people intelligence.
asked.
We tolerated it for so long, it's become acceptable, and we have people that bully each other intellectually. So we need to, like, as a society in cybersecurity, shift the culture and not tolerate that anymore.
Right, and that's part of why I asked,
Yeah.
because I'm trying to think of what's a good way to challenge it without sounding over defensive or,
Well, you can always ask, and this, I don't know this person, but you can ask like what the outcome they're seeking is. If the outcome is to frustrate everyone they work with, and for them to be frustrated, they can continue doing what they're doing. But I doubt that's the outcome. So we need to like look at what's the desired outcome we want of the situation. And a lot of time the bully is just frustrating everyone else, which then they feel alienated because nobody wants to be around them, which is not, it's like just fostering more of that behavior. It's not really serving them.
If you're seeing that,
It requires who you're talking. It depends on who you're talking about.
if you're seeing this work, this is directly related to personal relationships just as much as the workplace.
Mhm.
And one of the things would be this is something that maybe be very useful with your wife and with your family at the same time, because empathy is a good example.
Yeah.
I think empathy is, I tend to put empathy on the very top of the list for a number of reasons. Try to put yourself in the other person's place and where they're coming from. And maybe some of the other things will fall in line when you do that. Try to really understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And if they understand that you're trying to do that, they may turn around at the same time too. It's not guaranteed, but
Yeah, that could help with the bully, could help with your relationships, yeah. Yeah, a book that I read quite often, I reread it, we listen to it, is The Four Agreements. It talks about not taking things personally, not making assumptions when you deal with other people. So it's a good reference for what you're referring to.
sure.
Yeah. Cool. All right, any other questions?
I know I've got a lot out of this, so I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you for sharing with us. So there's stuff that I can take directly back to the office and actually use. So thank you.
Oh, good. Thank you. Sure. Cool.